Hi, I'm Effie, and in this video I'm going to be running through my top 10. I would do, but I've got wine in my hand. My top 10 books that I read in 2023. These are in no particular order. I probably could rank them if you pushed me, but honestly it's been a really weird year in that I think a lot of books have been mid, but I don't know, like I adored all 10 books on this list. There are more books that I adored beyond this list, but I spent one of those years when I was looking at creating these lists, and honestly I was like, I don't really know. I don't have a solid idea of what's best and what's worst. I'm just gonna kind of look at them and try and figure it out. So as I say, in no particular order, we've got On the Savage Side by Tiffany McDaniel. This book follows two young girls from childhood right up until adulthood. They are dealing with generational trauma, drug abuse, SA. Like, they do not have an easy life. And in addition to that, there is what appears to be a serial killer attacking sex workers in the town that they live in. This book is a fictionalized account of what happened or is happening. I think there's not been any additional cases for some years, but this is a fictionalized account of the Chillicothe Six. So it's based on a true crime and an unsolved true crime at that. There are some theories about it, but technically it's still an unsolved case. And I think what Tiffany McDaniel did is approach this with compassion and respect. And whilst no one should need to be humanized, I think this did a really good job of humanizing these women and kind of creating an idea of their complex lives and the lives that potentially led them up to this point. There were some really impressive twists and turns to this book. I was lucky enough to buddy read this with 3 other people, and it was very interesting because we did it over Discord, and we all kind of read it at different paces. Like, we had a month where we were reading it, but we read it at different speeds. So seeing other people that were like a bit before or a bit after and seeing their thoughts and reactions was really rewarding, especially because there was at least one twist where it was a 50-50 split on who saw it coming and who didn't see it coming. But once I saw it, it was so cool to go back and see all the groundwork that had been laid for this twist. And then there was also something at the end where it shouldn't have felt like a twist, but it did. And yeah, overall, an absolutely gorgeous book. Equal parts beautiful and heartbreaking. And in fact, I think I made it's both a YouTube short and a reel of some of my favourite quotes from the book earlier in the year, and I can't speak highly enough of this book, to be honest. The Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. So this year I ended up reading the vast majority of the Grishaverse. I've read the Shadow and Bone trilogy, the Six of Crows duology, and the King of Scars duology. I know there's a few more books in addition to that, and I'd previously read Demon in the Woods, so I'm fairly up to date on the Grishaverse. So you think that Rule of Wolves, which is the last Grishaverse book that I read, maybe I would have had enough of the Grishaverse, or maybe it couldn't surprise me, couldn't impress me, but nothing could have been farther from the truth. I really liked the representation in this book. I liked the twists and turns. A lot of it I couldn't have possibly seen coming, but I really appreciated what it did. And I think Bardugo has just such a way with writing that really appeals to me and kind of tickles a certain area of my brain. Our Dark Duet by V. Schwab. I mean, first off, I would have been shocked if I didn't have one of Schwab's books on this list. Although I'm pretty sure I won't be able to put any Schwab on my list next year because Schwab's not releasing a book next year. But I would say that pretty much every year I'm going to have a V. Schwab on my list. But I've now read all of Schwab's back catalogue. I think the only thing that I haven't read is the short story at the end of The Fragile Threads of Power, because I haven't been able to get my hands on either the Barnes & Noble edition or the Forbidden Planet edition. But apart from that, I've read all of Schwab's back catalogue. So Our Dark Duet is the second book in the Monsters of Verity duology, and it's a really clever world. I really appreciated it. So essentially you have these monsters that are born out of the crimes that people commit. And in the first book, you're very much focused on this place called Verity, but you know that there are other places that are all named after the opposite of vices and sins. I can't remember the word for it. So essentially, you are seeing this city that has been kind of cleft in two, because on one side you've got the humans going, okay, let's partner up with the monsters and kind of use them for our own needs. And then on the other side, you've got the humans going, you know what? That's a really bad idea. Let's just not let the monsters kind of run free and pretend we're in control. So you have these two sides kind of at war. And this book does a really good job of kind of analysing what is the difference between someone who's human and someone who's a monster. And it sits beautifully in this idea of grey morality, and there are no good characters. Like, everyone is incredibly well written, but no one is completely good or completely evil. You can see the understanding in all of the characters, and it was just so cleverly written. And this is the second book, so you're expanding the world a little bit, seeing more of the way that these creatures might exist or corrupt. And Schwab did an incredible job with this book, and it had an ending that was the true sense of bittersweet. 10 Things That Never Happened by Alexis Hall. This is following a bed and bath sales manager, and the person who owns the company. It's a grumpy sunshine romance where the sunshine has to pretend that he's got amnesia to try and save his job and the jobs of everyone in his store. It is set around Christmas time, and it's just, it's so fun to read. And I love the way that Alexis Hall writes. I do need to read more Alexis Hall, but so far, everything by him that I've read has done this brilliant job of showing you adults in adult relationships that are able to communicate with one another. And something that I particularly appreciated in this book was kind of the hurts that people carry, and I guess the way that Christmas isn't necessarily this like cheery time that seems to be kind of piped into our homes. Like, these are two characters that have very complicated feelings around Christmas, and seeing them work on it together, and they're such a cute couple. Like, you can imagine them like snuggled up on the sofa watching TV together, with Gollum the cat just taking up a whole sofa cushion all to himself. And I also really appreciated the epilogue to this book, which is a callback to when Jonathan, the bath and body store owner, when he was first mentioned in husband material. It's a really satisfying callback to that. The Kindred by Alechia Dow. I'll be completely honest, I don't remember that much about this book, but I do remember it being exceptional. So this book is a YA sci-fi in which at birth everyone in the universe, galaxy, I can't remember which it is paired up with someone called their kindred, and they have a telepathic connection. The idea is to sort of foster understanding because people are seeing other perspectives, like they're living in each other's heads. And in this story, I think it's like a crown prince is paired up with this very lowly girl, and it was never meant to happen this way. And then kind of hijinks ensue, and they end up having to flee to Earth and like experience what life on Earth's like for them. And it's a heartwarming tale, whilst also, you know, looking at things like racism, classism, etc. And it made me want to pick up all of Alechia Dow's books. And I'm so glad that I have read this book. Lost in the Moment and Found by Seanan McGuire. This is, you know, I've lost track. I think it's number 8 in the Wayward Children series. One of these books seems to come out every year. So Lost in the Moment and Found came out this January, February. It depends if you're getting hardback or ebook. But it came out at the start of this year. And I was lucky enough to get an ARC. I've been really lucky. And I think the last 4 I've managed to get an ARC for. But I didn't have time to read it until like the very start of this year. And in this book, you are following a character called Antoinette, who has a horrendous family situation. Her father dies, and then her stepfather is not a good guy. The book very kindly opens with an author's note that basically says, "Don't worry, Antoinette runs." And whilst my circumstances are quite different from Antoinette's, I could see a lot of kind of the pain that I still am working through, and probably always will be working through, reflected in Antoinette's story. And it really resonated with me. It left me in tears at times, but it was the good cathartic kind of tears, and it was a joy to read, really. Letters to the Lost by Brigid Kemmerer. This book is following 2 different characters who are both dealing with grief from very different places. It's told in alternating POVs, and they first start their connection by literally writing letters to each other. And then it evolves to emails, and eventually they do meet in person. But it has a lot of like nuance to it, and the way that it looks at grief feels very authentic to the journey that people take when they are grieving, in that it starts off very heavy in the grief, and kind of that's all you can really feel in this book. But then as the story progresses, you do get highs and lows, and I thought this book very well reflected the way that grief isn't a linear journey. There are going to be peaks and valleys, and it was just so beautiful to read, and it made me so glad that I was reading it. The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman. This is the 3rd book in the Thursday Murder Club series. I've still got to read the 4th book. Looking forward to reading it in the new year. I'm on to rereads for the rest of the year, which is why I was able to make these lists. So I'm not able to pick it up until the new year, but I'm desperately waiting to be able to pick up book 4. There's something about these books that is just so enjoyable to read. Like, Richard Osman has this fantastic way of writing, and it makes it an absolute joy to return to Cooper's Chase. I will say that kind of every time I step away from the series, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe they're not as good as I remember. And then I'll read another book in the series. I think there's only 4 planned at the moment, but then we're going to get more in the future. But every time I return to one of the books in the series, I am immediately kind of sucked back in and go, ah, that's why I love this series. It's such a well-constructed band of characters who are complex and have their successes, their failures. And there's a little bit of something in everyone that you can relate to, even though these are much older characters. You're going, yeah, I can see myself in that aspect of this character and that aspect of this character. And it makes it so easy to follow along and enjoy and just devour. The other thing that I really enjoyed about this book was the fact that I feel like we're getting closer to a character coming out. I mean, I could be way off base. I could be reading my own biases into these characters, but I feel like every book that we have gotten with these characters, there's been this kind of maybe queer element to it, and it feels like, I don't know Richard Osman. I don't know if he is the type to queerbait. And please, if you've read book 4 and you know if it is queerbaiting or not, do not tell me in the comments. I'm literally reading this book probably next week at the point this video is going up. Please do not ruin this for me. But like, I'm really hoping that he's not queerbaiting. It feels a bit baity because we haven't gotten the payoff yet, but it also feels like we're moving towards a coming out. And the thing is as well, that one, I didn't realise these books take place over such a short period of time. I think these books all take place over about a year, and I can see the fact that these are older characters, and if they've never really explored their own sexuality, they may not be in a place where they feel like they can come out yet, or that they fully understand that they are queer in some way. And I'm giving the books that grace, but I do feel like I'm being slightly baited at this point. But I also think there's one more book that I'm about to read, so I'm hoping that we get the answers in that book and it's the answers I want. But even if it's not, like, if it's acknowledged and spoken about. But I also think Richard Osman's an incredibly clever man, or at least that's the persona he puts forward. So I think he's very aware of what he's doing, and I think he's like very deliberately doing things in the way that he is, or at least that's my hope. I guess we'll see next month. Like, I guess if you see a ranty video from me coming out next month, you'll know why. The Rule of 3 by Sophie Snow is a polyam romance between 2 guys and a young woman. The young woman is a singer-songwriter who has just gotten out of a long-term relationship with someone that was not the nicest guy to her, and she's kind of coming to terms with all of that. She's also got some other traumas, and then you've got these 2 men who happen to be her neighbours who are also dealing with some kind of traumas, and they've got a past romantic connection, and they all just form this really cute polycule, and it's so healing, and there's fantastic conversations around trauma and moving forward, and the poly romance is on point in my opinion. And the final book is Gideon the Knife by Tamsyn Muir. This is another book that I feel like I can't really say much about, just because, like, it's weird. So everyone says that it's really confusing and it'll pickle your brain and stuff. I didn't feel that way when I was reading this book. So, like, maybe I didn't read it properly or something. Maybe something's wrong with me. But I didn't feel confused by it. I'm interested to see where Harrow goes, which is the sequel, and likely will pick that up next year, quite near the start. I don't know, I feel like it's a weird year in that I've got lots of books that I'm like desperate to read. Usually at this point in the year, when I'm on to rereads, I'm like, okay, well, I want to reread this, reread that, reread that. But right now I'm actually like, I'm excited for specific books that I want to pick up in the new year, which is great, but I've got to wait. Like, at the point that I'm filming this, I've got 9 days until the new year. Like, I'm itching to pick up these books, but I can't. But also, before I pick up Harrow, I'm going to want to reread Gideon anyway, so it's fine. The thing that most surprised me about this book was the sense of humour. It is hilarious. It's another one where the audiobook is actually exceptional. I thoroughly recommend. I can't remember who the narrator is or narrators, but if you can get your hands on the audiobook of it, it is so well produced. And yeah, I just highly recommend it. And the story was great as well. I liked the trial aspect of it. I liked the interpersonal relationships. Overall, it was just a good time for me. So those are the 10 best books that I read in 2023. Please let me know in the comments your very best book that you read in 2023. But until tomorrow, is this the last book? I'm wondering if this is the last video of 2023. I guess if it is, until next year. If it's not, until tomorrow. But love you. Bye.